Welcome to Broke Chick Flips, where I try to take some of this old junk and turn a profit. Today we're going to be working on this 1981 square body. Alright guys, I got this door all disassembled. The other door that we had on the truck had a lot of structural damage on the frame, so this one, even if there is rust here. So I've got all the holes welded up on this door, got all the dents pulled out, all the rust fixed, so now this door is ready to get some filler on it. Alright guys, now that the hood is done, I'm going to take off this fender. This one hasn't been completely stripped yet either, and I need to get the fender off to get the emblem off. This only really has one good dent here. It's going to be a pretty easy one to pull, and then once we get it stripped, we'll know if there's any more rust on here. I mean, honestly, this one looks pretty clean. This is actually a really nice fender. I don't think that this is going to take us very long, so we'll get it stripped, pull that dent. Hopefully that there's no rust. This one does look to be in really good shape, so hopefully I'm not wrong. Bolt's being really stubborn. Basically, there's these little square kind of nutsert ordeals on the fender that this lower valence here connects to. I'm guessing because of this hit, one of them's broken off in there, so it's just spinning. And there's an inner and outer to this fender, so it's really hard to get in there. I might be able to get into it through this pocket, but right now I'm just trying to pry on that hole and get enough tension on the back part of that so I can spin it out. Not having much luck, but I'm gonna get a tiny screwdriver and slide it into this hole and see if I can get it to stop spinning there and see if I can get this thing vice grip so I can thread this last bolt out. All right, the bolt won, so I'm gonna cut its head off. All right, fender off. I'm gonna vacuum the back side of this and inside the holes so I don't accidentally get mauled by a spider. And then we'll strip the rest of this down, fix that dent, and see if there's any more rust. So this stud, I literally just put the ratchet on it, and like as soon as I touched it, it fell off. Didn't even actually get to even like put any twist on it, so that's all right. It's the same one that's broken off the other side. I think I'm actually gonna weld these up and not put the emblems back on because one emblem is already messed up. And I mean, it is a Scottsdale one. The other one on the driver's side was already like busted in half and like missing pieces. So I don't know, maybe I'll just weld up those holes. The sleek look is in anyway. All right, well, just looking at the back side of this fender, we are gonna have to do a little bit of rust repair. There is a tiny hole here, which is pretty common in the inner. So I'll just make a little piece for there. Shouldn't be too bad. And then there's this corner over here, which looks pretty bad, but we'll see exactly how bad it is after I hit it with a sandblaster. But I'm gonna strip the front first, and then we'll go in just on this edge with a little sandblaster and see what we can do. But I mean, that's pretty common rust. I mean, there might be some stuff here too. The inside of the panel doesn't look too bad. There's a little bit of surface rust in there, but nothing too bad. The rest of it looks like it's in good shape. It's just kind of those two areas. I did kind of hit this one with my pry bar and I didn't poke a hole in it, but you really don't know until you hit it with the sandblaster. Let's flip this over and I'm gonna strip the front and see if there's any rust holes on the front. If there's not, I'll go fix that dent and then we'll fix the inner there on the back side. Okay, just scraping this off. It's just got some really old double-sided tape on it. If you're doing this on a panel, trying to get one of these off and you didn't want to scratch the panel, don't use a metal one, use a plastic one. We're gonna be cutting this guy up anyway. Now we gotta go in with a razor blade and take the rest of that 3M tape off, because if you just try to hit it with the grinder, it melts and just clogs your sandpaper and smears all over your panel. Had to switch to my Temu one because it actually works a little bit better. You can also heat this stuff up if it's like really not coming off, but I'm not worried about damaging the paint underneath, so. All right, so now I got this stripped down. I didn't mention before, but I've mentioned it previously. I use either 40 grit or 80 grit 8-inch disc on my polisher at low speed. It strips it pretty fast, so as you guys saw, it doesn't take very much time at all to get a fender stripped down. There's some spots that you can't really get to with the big polisher without cutting the sandpaper edge, so I'm just gonna go in with my red Scotch-Brite pad. This one's just a 3-inch, and I'm gonna just clean up all the other areas. So far, I haven't found any rust holes, so that's good, but I'm just gonna clean up the little edges and any spot that I couldn't get into where it's a kind of a dent, so that it's all prepped for our pin welding and everything else. I don't know if you guys can tell yet, but I'm on and off hot and cold, so I've been stripping and putting on layers all day. But anyways, I've got this whole thing stripped down. I'm not seeing any really evident rust spots on the outside, so that's super awesome. Right here in this corner is where that inner was a little bit rotten there. And I do see a couple tiny like grain sand divots. So I'm just gonna take out my trusty mini flathead screwdriver and I'm gonna poke those little divots and make sure that the metal's not super soft right here and see if I have to replace it. But I'm feeling pretty hopeful. Yeah, you guys can see there's like a tiny little nick right there. I don't know if you guys will be able to see it, but it's just a tiny little nick. So I'm just gonna take the edge of my screwdriver, and if I poke a hole, okay, no hole there, another one in there. No hole there. All right, that all looks good. If you don't poke through with one of these, and like I push quite hard, not hard enough to dent, but you're like, you gotta kind of try to gouge it. But yeah, those all look good. So the metal is still solid here. So I don't have to do any rust repair on the front, just deal with those dents over there. Guys, all the dents on the front of this fender are addressed, so we're just gonna flip it over and deal with those rusty spots that I showed you guys before. I'm gonna have to sandblast some of the stuff there on the inner edge. Anyways, we are going to be addressing kind of some of these rusty areas. I'm just gonna hit it with the sandblaster. I might go in with my grinding disc a little bit first just to knock off the scale, and then hit it with my sandblaster, and then see how many rust holes we actually have, and then we'll repair the inner, and then this fender is done. I don't think that they're going to be very big patches, but yeah, we got to get rid of all the rust before we can move on, so we're going to address that today, and hopefully it's not very much. Alright guys, we have a very common case of Swiss cheese going on over here. This corner is actually a lot worse than I was expecting it to be. So we'll have to patch this in. There's some rust holes here as well, so lay a little patch in. And then I already knew that this was going to be rotted out, so we'll replace this little bit of inner as well. So we're just going to get to forming some sheet metal and making it look the best as possible. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time doing the patches on the inside because you won't be able to see this once anything is put back together. I just want to make sure that it's not rusting further. This one and this one are both hard to shape pieces. This one's got so many different rounds, so it'll take a little bit to shape that. And then this guy in here, super common for them to be rusted in here. This is kind of where all the dirt sits and collects, so you'll find these fenders a lot of the time will be rusted out here. I'm surprised that it wasn't rusted on the backside for how rusty it was in there, but that's it. Let's get to cutting some metal. All right, guys, so we're gonna continue on with the inners on this fender. I've kind of got my rough area where I want to cut out marked. Normally, I make the patches and fit them before I cut this stuff out, or get the general shape before I cut them out, but I'm gonna be building these patches up at Mike's, because I need a shrinker and a stretcher and the metal brake. It'll be way faster to do it up there. So I'm gonna cut these out first and then rough cut some pieces of metal out of my steel, and then we're gonna head up to Mike's and use his brake and a shrinker and stretcher to form these. And because I'm going to cut these out, I'm going to bring them up there with me so I can just fit the parts I'm making onto these old pieces to make sure I get the right shape. And then we'll bring them back down here and weld them in. Alright, so these patches are cut out. As you can see, they're kind of like Swiss cheese. This piece is going to be really easy to make. This is just basically a 90-degree bend and then some work on the edge with a shrinker. This one is going to be a little bit more complicated, but still just going to be the metal brake and the English stretcher. Might need to use a sandbag on this piece too to get this big curve in, but anyways. That one will be a little harder than this one. This one's going to be nice and easy. This one was a little bit harder to cut out. It had a little spot weld here on the end that you guys saw me grind. I could have drilled it out and made it nicer, but honestly that metal right there is kind of thin anyways, so I'm going to throw in a little patch in that area so I wasn't too worried about getting it messed up with the grinder. But yeah, it had a little spot weld here on the end, and then it's kind of hard to get in that deep groove, but managed to get it out, so that's good. This one's a little funky shape. I did use a little pattern because it's gonna be a weird one to make. Anyways, so that's what we're working with so far. And now we just need the English brake and the shrinker and stretcher. So this one I want a softer brake. So instead of pulling this down and locking it in to get a sharp corner, I'm just gonna keep a little bit of tension on it and start to bend this. And it'll give us a little bit softer of a line. So there we go. I love how you called them to just
okay, anyway, we just thought we'd re-share that memory with you. Thanks, Hunter.
I'll never forget it.
Seared forever in your nasal passages.
So I want this to curl up this way. So I'm going to use this edge and I'm going to shrink it. And when I shrink it, it's going to pull that metal in and it's going to create a curve in this piece. So this is a shrinker. It's got these little dies in here, and when you push down on this, it'll actually bring those dies together, and they got little grippies on them, so it pulls the metal in. I'm gonna start doing my bends on this half. Basically, I'm gonna tell you guys right now that this stretcher is not, or this shrinker is not the greatest. It's like a Princess Auto Special, so these dies kind of suck, but anyways, you put it in there, and you start off just a little bit. You push down on the foot pedal. Some of them have a handle here that you use. This one's got a foot pedal, so it's nice. And we're just gonna go back and forth a little bit by a little bit and start making our curve. And then the other thing is how far you put this metal into the teeth is gonna depend how much it bends. If I hold this metal out here and shrink it, I'm gonna get a way steeper bend faster. But we want a nice soft bend, so we try to work it into the teeth as much as we can. But if you're trying to put a hard corner into something, pull the metal out more and then do it. Yeah, so basically, you guys look here. So those dies, they got little grippies on it. So those lines are the little grippies, and then it pulls the metal together and it basically crimps it and shrinks the metal. So the metal gets tighter here because of all those ridges and dimples. And that's what creates that corner. Got the bottom corner done. Now I'm gonna start shrinking up here and get more of a curve going, but we got the first initial steep curve done. Now we're just gonna go through and gently work the rest of this. So now we got that curve good, so I just check it on the inner edge here. But now, as you guys can see, this one actually kind of curves in. So now I gotta work this piece of steel. And so we're also gonna use the shrinker on the very edge. And when we shrink this edge, this flatter spot is going to start to round as well. So we're going to work that a little bit. Now the issue being is the shrinker has flat teeth, so it's going to be a little bit rough, but we're going to do the initial shrink and then we'll go in on the anvil and a hammer and just make it more uniform. But it's got to be shrunk a little bit first before you can do that. Now we'll go put this in, and remember I was saying previously that the less material you put in there, the more it's going to bend. So I'm just going to do a little bit because I want it to be very close there to the edge. And I'm just going to do a handful. And I got this shrunk a little bit. I'm going to take it over the anvil and start doing a little hammer and dolly work, and we still might have to shrink it again, but I'm gonna start there and see. So now we got more or less the general shape going here. So I'm gonna call that good for this one. We might still need to finesse it just a little bit when we get down and put it on the car for the actual fender. It still might need a little bit shaping, but I'm gonna call that pretty good for now. So that's that piece. All right guys, so this is our new little piece. This is the old one. When I go fit this piece in here, it fits basically perfectly. It's a really good fit. As you guys can see, this patch, or like the old piece, this is wider here than it is here. Mine's even all the way around, so what I'm gonna do is when I go put this in here, where I have it set, you're gonna see that there's a little bit of a tail. I'm gonna go in afterwards and I'll just grind that to the same shape as the outer fender instead of cutting that little piece with my metal shears. It's too tight of a space where the crease is to give it a nice cut. So on a piece like this, I'll weld it in and I'll just trim it later because it'll be easier to trim it to this profile. There might be a little prying with a screwdriver I gotta do on this little corner, but other than that, fits in there pretty nicely, so we just got to weld it in. I am going to go ahead and spray the back side of this with the etching primer, so that, and inside here, so that we aren't going to have continue, and because it's meeting up with another flange, I won't be able to get in there afterwards and put any rust coating on, so that's why we're going to throw a little bit of primer on the back side so that it's not going to be bare metal in there, which is really important because if you have bare metal on bare metal, it's going to rust. You need something as a rust protection. So I'm gonna do that quickly and then we're gonna get this tacked in. All right guys, so this is what I just sprayed on that. This is some one-step self-etch. This is by SureSeal. This is a product that we use lots. We used it lots at Rust Bros too. This is a self-etching primer. And basically what self-etching means is it's gonna chemically bond to the metal so you don't have to abrade it. So this is what you want to be spraying on like bare steel. You can also go ahead and use something like weld through primer. I find doesn't hold up quite as nice as this. This will burn off a little bit more, but we are going to go back in through all these panels and spray something like snakeskin oil to protect the inside. So I just needed something that's going to sit between those two seams that I'm welding, and that is going to make sure that the metal doesn't continue to rust. So this is what I use. And if your metal's pitted or anything like that, you can also go in beforehand and use a rust converter. Oh my God, it's just beautiful. It's not a perfect fit, so I'm gonna tack the spots that fit really nicely. And then, yeah, let's go like that. Let's see if that, just that one little corner. Okay, beautiful. So now that that corner fits really well and it fits really good to here, I'll do a tack here and a tack there, and then I'll just squish this end back in there. Sometimes it's really hard to hold these in the right spot and do everything at once. So for my rule of thumb is like, you put it in there, make sure it does fit good, but it's hard to get it held up there. So pick a tiny corner and do a tiny tack weld. And I like to do like something super quick that doesn't get much penetration. It's like literally just to hold it there. And then you can kind of move this around, and if you're feeling like it's a bad fit and you might need to make some changes, you could just grind the top of the tack. You don't actually have to cut back through it if it's not a very good tack. And then you can just kind of break it off and replace it. So yeah, that's what I'll do, is just a tiny tack that doesn't have very much penetration. And then I can still kind of bend the metal and move it to where I need, and then place another tack. And if the tack is bad or I feel like the patch needs more, just grind the top, and then it's fragile enough to just kind of break it off. All right, now it's just time to solid weld the inside of this, and there's only one spot weld on the outside here. Should have maybe done something with that, but I'm just gonna weld it like that. Anyways, yeah, so I'm gonna weld the two open edges here, and then we'll put back in a spot weld, and yeah, we'll call call this patch good. I'm gonna do some light grinding on it, but I'm not gonna grind it a whole hell of a lot. Also, if you guys saw when I was cutting this, I had to cut further up into the inner just to get my little die grinder in there, so I will have to put some welds up here, just because it was collateral damage for cutting up the patch. See you when I'm done. Alright guys, this patch is welded in. I did just throw some, what is it called, self-etch back on top, because I was actually trying to see if I had any pinholes. If you guys ever have like pinholes on a panel, if you spray it with some of that self-etch, just like a thin primer, sometimes you can see any pinholes way better. But it actually all looks really, really good. I still have a little bit more grinding to do, but I need a grinding zip disc to get into this corner a little bit better, but the rest of it's all ground and it looks really good. Fits nice and solid, no more rust there, so now it's time to do the same thing to the other side. This one is going to be more complicated. Alright guys, so we're trying to make this corner piece. It's a kind of a complex piece. I did try to make it all in one piece, but I don't have a plemishing hammer and neither does Mike, and so I tried just using the shrinker and stretcher and the sandbag, and it was just going to stretch the metal out too much and take too long to kind of finesse it. So anyways, what I'm going to do is I'm making this bottom flat piece first. We're going to shape this to the bottom, and then I'll make this piece hopefully in one piece. Because this round is so big, I can't actually do it just with the shrinker and stretcher and sandbag. I mean, I probably could, but it's just takes too much time. And then I'm gonna do relief cuts where this big bulging corner is, and I'll bend the pieces back and then I'll just weld these up, I think is my plan. But we'll see once I start making it what it turns out to be, but it's gonna be a patch that's made in at least 2 pieces. It really sucks having to make a patch in more than one piece, but sometimes you can't really get away with it, especially if you don't have the right metal shaping tools. We're gonna just try to whip this out really fast. It doesn't have to be a perfect mirror match, but we always try to get it to be that. So yeah, we're gonna see how good we can get this, making it in a couple different pieces with minimal metal shaping tools. Alright, so I got the rough shape of this bottom piece here. This bottom has a little bit of a curve downwards, so we'll have to bend it downwards. But the other thing is it's got a really like not sharp, kind of half round curve here. And so when I go make this piece and when I'm making this piece, I'm actually going to curl this edge just slightly. So instead of having a hard 90-degree corner when I go weld those 2 pieces together, it'll still be a nice even half round. So I'll just gently tap this up so it's a little bit of a half round, and I'll do the same to this so that when I go weld it together, I don't have just an ugly 90-degree bend that's not going to match this right here. That's what I'm going to do now, and then get this just like the right shape. And then I actually might tack this piece in, just like doing some very light tacks that I could cut off later, and then I'll make this other piece. Okay, now I've got this bottom piece, the same curve, and it's fit up to this edge right here. So I'm just gonna mark my line so I know exactly where to trim this so it's gonna fit well, and then we'll get tacking this piece in. So it's fit nice. I always cut my metal just a little bit bigger than what I'm gonna need to kind of account for the bends and stuff I'm gonna have to make or any adjustments. So I'll make sure that's nice and fit up there. Then I'm just gonna mark the edge, and now I know what I have to cut off to get this all good. Basically, guys, I have to buy new dies for this. I had flipped my dies over to the best side that there was, but anyways, all these sides have been used, so this needs new dies. And so for these really thin cut, it's just like not doing its job. So anyways, might see me use a couple more of these until I order a new set of those dies. The dies are kind of expensive, but they last forever. Probably price is set out. Anyways, gonna do a little bit more grinder work and metal shears. All right, so this little piece is done. I'm gonna spray the back side of this with a little bit of self-etch like I did with that piece over there, just because I can't get to the back of it. Obviously don't want to have bare metal on the inside of that because it'll rust. Also, there's a little bit of surface rust in here, and I'm not going to be able to get all the little bit of surface rust on the inside, but I am going to just quickly do a little bit of a sandblast to the areas that I can get to on the inside here and get it cleaned up, and go over this with my Scotch-Brite to make sure that the metal's clean before I go tack this in. piece good. So I'm just gonna tack this into place and then we'll get to making the other piece. All right, now this funny shape should be at least roughly kind of ish resemble that once it's done. All right, I've got the general round kind of done, but now I need to get that protruding corner. So I'm gonna put a couple of relief cuts here and then use those relief cuts to kind of bend the metal. Basically, I'll cut like basically a little V out of each one of these marks, and then I'll be able to bend the metal together, and where it meets, weld it, and it should form the corner I need. I know that's kind of not the best explanation, but I'm gonna show you. Hey guys, I've got the shape in the corner matched up really nice here. There's a little bit of trimming I'm gonna do, and then a final little bit of finessing, but there's not much left to do with this patch, and it actually turned out pretty well in that corner. These are gonna get welded up, and I'm just gonna trim this down so it's the right shape, and then I'll do the last little bit of curling I have to do on the edges. But yeah, so that worked. Now we just gotta finish it off here. All right guys, this is a little patch. What I'm gonna do from here, there's still like a little bit finessing in this corner, but I've got all the curve right and the corner fits really nice. So I'm gonna get the top of this patch tacked in here where I know it's all good, and then I might trim the bottom once I have the top tacked, just so I get a perfect fit down at the bottom. But yeah, this patch actually worked out pretty good doing it in just the two pieces. So I'm gonna start tacking, and then once I get this tacked, I'll go back in with my grinder and zip cut the bottom edge just to get a perfect fit down there. So yeah, let's get after it. All right, I got the top tacked in here, so I'm just gonna finesse this a little bit more with my hammer and then cut off the excess, and we'll finish tacking this in. So I've got this patch tacked into place now. It looks a little rough, but as soon as I finish welding it and grinding it, it's gonna look really good. Everything fit really nice. I just had to trim some of the edges. So yeah, it's tacked in there. A lot of times when you're making a funky patch like this, it is hard to get them like perfect in a short amount of time. So I always tack the places that when I put it up there that meet and are flush and look really good, I tack those in place, and then I work out from that area. So anyways, yeah, now everything's fit really good. So I'm just gonna weld this up and do some grinding, and I'll show you guys the finished product.